the music and voices that legends are made of.
Professional football in America is a special game.
Pick up the Power and the Glory CD from NFL Films and Tommy Boy Music and make every day a Sunday. The Power and the Glory. It's your ticket to the NFL experience.
Is this fun or what?
Cowboys has been a history of winning. And since the team's inception in 1960, there's been a seemingly endless list of great players, each adding their own chapter to the tale. Today, we take a look at the men who wore the star, starting with the most unlikely of Dallas legends, safety Bill Bates.
The Dallas Cowboys are known as America's team. Countless kids across the country have dreamed of wearing the helmet with a star. And one of those kids suffered through the entire 1983 college draft, waiting for the Cowboys to call.
First 6 rounds go by and I wasn't drafted. Next 6 rounds go by, 12 rounds wasn't drafted. The good thing about it was the next day, the Dallas Cowboys were knocking on my door wanting me to come play for them. They did tell me this. They said if there were 13 rounds in the NFL draft, I would have been the 13th round pick. And that kind of excited me, so I signed that contract right away and got on a plane and went to California and get off the plane and come to find out there's 185 13th round draft picks for the Dallas Cowboys. So I realized that at that point I wasn't that important.
Undrafted but undaunted, Bill Bates evolved from a rookie free agent to an enduring member of the Cowboy tradition. He played for Tom Landry, Jimmy Johnson, and Barry Switzer. He tackled Walter Payton, Earl Campbell, and Barry Sanders. Bates will go down in history as one of the NFL's toughest men and excitable boys.
Oh! What in the world? That may be the worst call I've ever seen in my life! That may be the worst ever!
Bill has always been a little too excitable.
Go, go, go! Yeah, yeah, yeah!
We were playing the Rams here a couple years ago, and he made a play on a kickoff.
Yeah, 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 yeah! Yeah, yeah! Yeah!
And I went out to greet him and figured I'd be doing a high five or something with him. He came over and butted me right in the head. He went about his business, and I got a towel and stopped the bleeding.
A few minutes later, I come back up to him and say, hey, you know, what play we're going to run? And I look up at him and say, hey, Joe, how'd you get that cut on your head? He just walked away.
Over the years, Bill Bates has overcome broken bones, major knee surgery, and a 1-in-15 season. The only thing he couldn't handle was starting his family with triplets.
When you have dreamed about having a big family and think that you're going to have twins, and on the sonogram, the doctor said, well, there's twins, and hold on, we found one more, triplets, and turn that sonogram off, don't find any more. I got 5. You got 5, right? 5 kids. They came home a week before our first training camp with Jimmy Johnson. Now, which was worse, you think, with going to training camp first with Jimmy Johnson or staying home with the triplets? You know, I think that's pretty much a toss-up because both of them were tough. At least in training camp, I got some sleep.
You know, the clue, he was carrying them, and they were crawling all over him.
We call him, you know, he has a little rabbit family. You know, he had a car full, you know, it was like a carpool, but they were all his kids.
You're at 6 years old, you're going to do a tea party and a spend the night party?
Yes.
You're kidding. You're kidding.
I'm 6 years old, Daddy.
All the conversations going on with those young people as he takes them to school, it really makes a unique picture to think of him as the family man, yet the aggressive gladiator that he is.
I love you.
The gladiator's mentality is not enough. Lasting more than a decade requires a special talent. For Bill Bates, that's special teams.
He has made an art form out of playing the kicking game.
Well, you had to account for him. Bill was going to get on there. He was going to be around the ball.
Now, they could end up changing, but wherever Bill Bates is, I want you, and kick his butt. All right, here we go, Bill Bates. Go attack him, right there, get up into him. Now, whatever he wants to do. If you try to bump him, he's going to bump, and he's going to run right by you.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Doing good. I'm just trying to get warmed up here. Yeah. We got you double teamed all day, so don't worry about it.
Bates' kamikaze style prompted the NFL to add a spot in the Pro Bowl for special teamers. And he continually elevated the position, while simultaneously amazing teammates by sticking ball carriers and by sticking around.
When I came here in '89, Bill Bates wasn't supposed to make the team. And in '90, Bill Bates wasn't supposed to make the team.
Intercepted by Bill Bates. Bill Bates saves the day.
Bill Bates began his career as a long shot who longed for the honor of wearing the Cowboy star. For the better part of 2 decades, Bates was a survivor who honored that star every time he took the field.
The game, the dedication that it takes. You give yourself up. You do the things that you weren't made to do. Those are the kinds of things that our fans think of when they think of Bill Bates. He's a big part of the tradition of the Dallas Cowboys.
My dream of playing for the Dallas Cowboys and dream of playing in the NFL came true. To make that star shine so bright and to be a professional. I've showed that Bill Bates played the game and he could truly be called a pro.
Faisal's Fine Home Furnishing.
Welcome back. And now, the Cowboy quarterback with a flair for excitement and the heart of a champion.
Don Meredith had a lazy twang in his voice and a lively zing in his arm. This native Texan was the quintessential good old boy.
He was going to have a good time, and the game to him was supposed to be fun, and he played it just that way. He loved the game, and he loved to compete.
Dandy Don saw himself as an entertainer, but he rarely followed the script. With a well-honed flair for improvisation, he played the role of a risk-taking renegade. During a decade that saw pro football become more regimented and systematized, Meredith's playing style was defined by the gamble rather than the game plan. But while his methods were unorthodox, he helped the Cowboys become one of the 60s most successful teams. Yet his devil-may-care spirit often produced hellish consequences. And he rankled the rigid sensibilities of a head coach who believed that discipline was the key to football excellence.
Our personalities were different, and he had a different outlook in football. He enjoyed football. You see him on television today, and that's the way he played football. He wanted to enjoy it. He wanted to have a good time doing it. And I didn't feel like that's what made great quarterbacks.
We're in the biggest game of our life against the Green Bay Packers, the championship game in 1966. First time we'd ever been in the playoffs. And I remember the day of the game, we come to a team meeting, and I walk into the meeting, and everybody said, "Gosh, have you seen Don?" I said, "No, what's that?" He said he was walking through a store shopping, and he walked through a plate glass window and said his face is all cut up, and, you know, he won't be able to play. Well, I mean, I was devastated. I mean, here we were getting ready to play the championship game, you know, and our quarterback is hurt. And, you know, you would see him up in the front of the room, and, you know, he'd kind of show you his face, and, boy, was there a tremendous scar on his face, you know, and you could see the stitches and everything. And all of a sudden, Meredith stood up and just took this scar and just peeled it off. And Burt Reynolds, who was a friend of his, had this, you know, Hollywood makeup artist make it up, and I'll tell you, it was so realistic. And when he pulled it off, I said, "Meredith, you son of a gun." He may have not have paid the price, particularly from a coaching standpoint, that you wanted to prepare for that game, you know, that you would like for him to, but he could go out and he played, and he could play with the best of them, and he was a tremendously courageous athlete.
We were playing the Redskins, and I remember we had 59 seconds left to go and no timeouts, and we had 95 yards to go for a score, and we had to score a touchdown to win the game. And Don was beaten up worse that day than I think I've ever seen any athlete take punishment like this in one game. The Redskins were blitzing him practically every play, and one of his ribs broke, punctured a lung, and subsequently after the game, his lungs started filling up with fluid, and he almost died on the flight back. While we're in the game, I remember coming back towards the huddle, and he's just lying down there, and I said, "Don, Jesus, you know, somebody is calling somebody to come carry him off the field." And he just looked up at me, he said, "Just get me to my feet." It's the only word he said. And I don't know why, but I knew we were going to win the game. right then and right there, I knew we were going to win.
Intense physical pain always brought out the hard-bitten competitor in the quarterback with the easygoing demeanor.
Don Meredith was the toughest quarterback that I've ever seen. Now, you talk about people being hurt and overcoming it and playing the games. Don Meredith stood alone in that position as a quarterback.
But Cowboy fans overlooked Meredith's fearlessness and instead dwelled on his failures. Critical mistakes and crucial contests turned this happy-go-lucky quarterback into a sad figure, a jester showered with jeers.
After we had lost badly to Cleveland, 38-19 or something, but it was worse than the score indicated. We went into this restaurant, and somebody noticed Don and I, and they started booing him. And the people sat there in this restaurant and stood up and booed him until we left.
He'd had a broken rib that punctured a lung, and he had pneumonia, and he'd lost 15 pounds, been in the hospital about a week, got out of bed, went to Cleveland, played in the game. We lost the game. Defense played lousy. And Meredith really didn't have a lot to do with the loss, but the next day he took all the heat in the paper.
Although fans rejected him, Meredith's teammates found his fun-loving spirit a rallying point for 9 seasons.
He was so loose and so carefree that it was so much fun to be around. And yet when the game rolled around, he was as competitive as anybody you've ever seen.
One of the most entertaining players to emerge from the sensational 60s, Don Meredith may never have won the big one. But his courage won him a lasting place in the Cowboys' Ring of Honor.
I know you like music. So, how'd the Seahawks?
Honey roast. Next, on Men Who Wore the Star, 2 teammates from the Landry era who are still together, still on top.
Hey, Bill. Charlie Waters.
Charlie.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Cliff Harris. How you doing? Good to see you. I'm not surprised they're in business together. You know, you think, like you said, Charlie and Cliff, you know, well, sure they'd be in business together. Why not?
Appreciate your time today. You know, we're in the electricity business, and we've got something we'd like to run by you today.
In business, and just like in sports, teamwork is the key.
You know, gas prices are up.
Be nice. Don't get Cliff mad, because if he takes that same intensity into the business world, how could you ever say no to this guy?
And if you come across the middle, and we put the forearm to the side of your head, we put the forearm to the side of your head if you don't do it, okay?
Okay.
You understand?
I understand.
Okay, good. Well, when do you want to start?
Anytime.
People do business with people that they know. And the one advantage that we have is they know us, and they want to do business with us if we have a good product.
People like you think you could do well in Washington or Philadelphia?
I go back to Washington, D.C. Those people love to come in, or Pittsburgh. Well, maybe not Pittsburgh. But they like to talk, you know, because they respected us.
As rookies in 1970, neither Charlie Waters nor Cliff Harris figured to find a home in the Cowboys secondary. But during the decade that followed, their aggressive play led Dallas to 5 Super Bowls and 2 World Championships.
Cliff Harris and Charlie Waters would have played the game for nothing. Those guys loved football, but they enjoyed practicing, everything around the game.
That's the way to go. Go deep, go deep, go deep, go deep. That's the way to go. That's the way to hustle, Cliff. That's the way to stay on him, Charlie. That's the way to stay on him.
You know, many times the players around you make you, and I think in their case, they made each other.
That's the way to hit it. Okay, Cliff. That's the way to go.
And they were so confident in each other and had such a communication rapport.
Right here. It's not Leroy's not on him. You're on him.
Tom Landry's doomsday defense of the mid-70s featured safeties who were almost identical in size and style. Their impact proved to be a lasting legacy.
I think they were the heart and soul and prototypical Dallas Cowboy of the 1970s.
Now, you were a coach for a while. If you had to come up with a scouting report on Cliff, what would you say?
What Cliff could do on my scouting report on him would be a very forceful person, would rather go for a hit than to make a statement, and thought that it wouldn't have a bigger impact on the game and the outcome of the game rather than going for an interception. If there was a chance to go for a hit or go for an interception, I'll always go for the interception.
No Dallas Cowboy ever intercepted more passes in the playoffs than Charlie Waters. But there are no statistics for what Cliff Harris did best.
What he did is he used to calculate the trajectory angle right there, and then all of a sudden he's going to get to that point and explode.
I want to make someone know that, hey, if they come into my territory, they're going to pay a price. It's their option. That's what I should tell the receivers. It's, you know, it's their option.
Together, we end up filling a void where there were no weaknesses in our attack. At least that's what we like to think about each other. You know.
Did you ever collide at all?
Oh, yeah. My hardest collision was when Cliff, we both...
The hardest hit you ever...
Hardest hit I got in my whole career was Cliff on a slant route. What game helped me? Baltimore.
Johnny Unitas.
And you remember the game?
Yeah, and I remember the defense we were in was a double team on the slant route on us, and I read the play perfectly. And it's cut in front of him for an interception, and next thing I know, they were carrying me off the field. It just knocked me slap out, and he just loved it.
Well, I read it perfectly, too.
Well,
you know, and we were both went for it.
What did Coach Landry say about that? Did he say, when you looked at it in the film room, did he say anything about that?
No, he doesn't generally comment about things like that. He says, you know, adjust your aim a little bit and try not to hit your own guys.
What happened, Charlie?
But when it comes down to the crunch time, I always reflect on the traits that he taught me.
You run into somebody? Huh? Well, let's go. Let's go. Let's fight our way. We're stopping touchdowns right now.
He believed in me and taught us a lot of things that we could live using throughout our lives.
What is the price today, Kelly?
I'm pleased with where we are today. I'm glad we're back together as friends, and it's so unique after almost 30 years that we're back together and working as a team together.
This is pleasing as before we're going to the Super Bowl. Better for me. Yeah, I mean, how could it be better? I mean, you know, Charlie getting All-Pro, it was incredible. I mean, you know, both of us.
The friendships and the goals that we accomplished today are going to be much more gratifying and longer term. We did those things with physical ability and determination. Now we're going to do these with our minds and creativity and the same discipline that we had during those days of pro football.
And we can get them in a headlock if we need to.
That's right, a forearm
a cheap shot, and we get the deal.
Forearm to the face if we need to.
The competition doesn't have that.
That's one other little ingredient that others don't have in their little bag of tricks.
Meet lifelong cowboy Walt Garrison.
So I carry my wallet in my boot. Got two wallets, incoming and outgoing. This one here's got, you know, credit cards, my business stuff. And then in the other one, that's the personal boot. It's always on the right. And, you know, just the personal checkbook, address book and stuff, you know. But I don't know. Thank God I don't wear anything but boots, or I'd be out of luck with these big things carrying them around.
Walt Garrison is as country as chewing tobacco and armadillo boots. He was born a cowboy, played for the Dallas Cowboys. And like the song says, all his heroes were cowboys.
There was guys like Mahan and Jim Shoulders and Casey Tibbs. Those guys were my heroes growing up in high school and college because I wanted to rodeo. As I think there's a lot of guys around the rodeo circuit, you know, that would probably like to find out if the stories about how tough I was are still true or not, you know, but thank God they don't want to find out bad enough to jump on me.
I mean, the guy was tough, and you couldn't hurt him. He was the type of guy that didn't lift many weights, but was in great shape, and it was because of the way he was raised.
In pro football, his prairies were 100 yards long and 55 yards wide, and he roamed this range treating tacklers like tumbleweeds. Yet his style, direct as frontier justice, did not impress everyone.
He wasn't really very fast, he wasn't very big, and he wasn't very anything, really, I thought. But the thing we discovered about Walt Garrison was he had a heart about as big as he was. Even though he may have been less talented than others in the physical aspects of the game, you cannot beat the competitiveness. You can't beat the desire to be the best.
He gained almost 4,000 yards and scored 30 touchdowns in 9 seasons. But statistics were not the measure of this man. Walt Garrison was 10 gallons of toughness in a cowboy helmet. Garrison was a burr under the saddle, and defenders got saddle sore trying to tame him. He was hog-tied, bulldogged, and pistol-whipped. But no team or no player was going to run him out of town. Not even a showdown specialist like Dick Butkus.
Butkus always had an intimidating style, and Butkus told Walt, he said, if you ever, if you come to the line again, I'm going to bite your head off. And Walt looked at him and said, oh, if you do, that'll be the first damn time you had any brains in your head.
Pain hurts me. I don't like pain. But they say that they define it, a threshold of pain. Some people's is low, some is high, and evidently mine is high.
And he would never come out of a football game. He was tough, he was durable. In the 49er game, which he played, he had a fractured clavicle. His knee was bad. The doctor had to pull him off the field to get him off the field.
Walt never gave up. There's no way a guy should have played. His ankle was swollen and he could hardly walk. He went out there and played, and that's the type of player he was. He was a guy that just never gave up.
Garrison played with a broken collarbone, and it was fractured all the way through, and he played the whole game. And I don't know if any of you all have ever had a broken collarbone, but it's very painful, especially when you're getting hit on it. When you think back about Walt Garrison, you think, they really did chisel him out of iron or out of mesquite wood or something, because he was tough as a nail.
Don Meredith nicknamed Walt Little Puddin', because he said he was just so cute, he looked like a little pudding.
Little Puddin' favored simple pleasures. His hands were rarely idle, usually busy by his two favorite pastimes, whittling and dipping snuff. Habits that this cowboy took to extremes.
He had a snorkel he brought for about a month up to the training room, and we'd go in there and we'd look over in the whirlpool, and there was a snorkel, and he'd come up and give us that Walt Garrison smile, which had that snuff. He was dipping snuff underwater with the snorkel in his mouth, and I said, man, anybody that do that's got to be dedicated.
I teamed up with a guy named David Dickerson, Brainy Dave, we'd call him. He busted beer bottles on his head. I used to put lighter fluid in my mouth. We could go into a bar, and I'd have a mouthful of lighter fluid and strike a match and look like a dragon. You shoot this stuff out about this far, and then Dickerson would bust, a couple of beer bottles on his head.
He's brimming up with anecdotes and limericks and jokes and stories and songs, and at the drop of a hat, he'd be reciting poetry, and he was hilarious.
I took Charlie Waters over there one night to Rustlers, and he was asking Bear Creek, well, can you lay on the floor and spit on the ceiling? And the ceiling's like 11 foot over at Rustlers in this beer joint. And he said, yeah. And so, he laid down on the floor and spit on the ceiling, and I mean, everybody was clapping. It's like it was a great deal. It's like somebody clearing 19, 20 foot in a pole vault, I mean, here's a guy that spit 12 foot, 11 foot on the ceiling, on his back.
Walt Garrison was a hard-case football player who had a hearty sense of humor. He put in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. He was a man who grabbed life by the horns.
Ian thanks you for watching this presentation of the National Football League.
ESPN welcomes you to the following presentation of the National Football League.